Hi, welcome to week 8 of Organizational Behavior, Developing Healthy Organizations. I'm Andrew Sears, and this week is really the culmination of everything you've done in the course. So, this course is about developing healthy organizations. So how do you shift an organization to be more healthy? That's really what this week is about, and that's called leading organizational change. And one of the dominant frameworks we're going to use is the competing values framework. So just to explain the context, everything up to this at this point, we've been giving you material, we've had quizzes, we've had live meetings and forums, and all the material. This is basically intended to be a synthesis. So up to now, most of the things you've been doing have been analysis. So this is basically, let's combine everything into how are you going to improve the health of an organization. So the readings this week talk about diagnosing and changing culture using the competing values framework. It has 5 steps. I've added a step 0, and there's a video focused on that because this framework assumes that you're a leader in an organization that has influence. So many of you may not be. You may not be the executive director. You may not be in a position where you could do this type of change management. So a key thing would be to talk with your leadership to try to get buy-in. And ultimately, you're going to need to, if you're not in senior leadership, you're going to need to let someone from the senior leadership lead this process, would be a key part of this process in your plan. But anyway, the steps for this is first, you're going to reach consensus on current culture. So that's the OCAI that you did in week 4, and you're going to use some of those results. And then you're going to also look at the desired future culture. And then you're going to go through and determine what the changes will and will not mean, identify illustrative stories, and review effectiveness. And that's actually create an action plan. I don't know. It's a little different here. Now, I just wanted to remind you that we also had some other change management process diagrams that are essentially going to be looking at the same steps, maybe in a slightly different way of articulating them. And then it's the same thing with this organizational design, the transformational model, that, all of these components, and, part of why I wanted to provide these is you're going to get into the section of what's the plan. These provide a little more detail. So, what needs to change in terms of processes, people, behavior, information, and then same thing here is what needs to change in your strategy, your core processes, your structure, your systems, your culture. So all of these things could be a part of your overall plan. And a big part of what you're trying to do in this is you're trying to make sure that everything's consistent in the organization. So let me just use an example of how City Vision did this. So City Vision, we as an organization had each of our staff complete the OCAI, and then I also completed the OCAI, and we determined as a consensus that we were too far on the entrepreneurial side, and we needed to grow both in the control or hierarchy side and the market, which is the compete side. So what we did with that, and we didn't, and I'll come back to this. So what we did with that is we said, how do we look at our current strategic plan and then frame that in terms of competing values framework? So what we did is we took each of the goals of our strategic plan and we prioritized goals, and we said we want, I think we said 40% on funding and sustainability, 30% of our effort's going to be on operations, 20% on relational, and 10% on entrepreneurial. And that was to get us to shift from what we normally do. So we created a 5-year strategic plan, and then we mapped each of our goals to the different quadrants. And this might be informative for you and your organization. So if your organization has a strategic plan, most likely each of your top level objectives or goals or whatever you call them in your organization are going to map to the various quadrants. And then what we did is, we had specific goals. We were going to grow the funding and financial capacity was to grow tuition, revenue by X%. And we had specific actions. We're not going to list them all for privacy reasons. Same thing with fundraising. And then operations. So, we've done a lot to improve our courses and programs. So that's a quality improvement section. We've also done the same thing with our administrative system. So that ties back to our 5-year strategic plan. We had a lot of action items. We spent actually, even though we said 40% and 30% of our effort, it was probably more flipped. I think it's probably more like 40 or 50% over here this term, and more like 20 to 30% over there. And then we have been working to improve our staff capacity and our faculty capacity to serve students. So that's the human capacity is our goal 3, and then the innovation capacity. So we're going to develop a new graduate program to submit to our accreditor, and we developed some free courses with the City Vision Institute. So coming back to a previous slide. So one of the things that you're going to do in your major project is you're going to go through and you're going to assess, what does it mean? What should you increase, decrease, or remain the same in each quadrant? So for us, we said we're going to decrease on create. So what does that mean? So we're going to do less projects. It means that we're not going to do these projects that probably aren't going to bring in revenue because we just do way too many of those. What it doesn't mean is we're going to stop innovating, as an example. And then with the hierarchy culture, what that meant for us was we're going to improve our courses and things along those lines. So you would need to do that, for your organization as a part of one of the worksheets in the course. So now, as a part of a change process, and this is a part of your chapter this week, you're leading change. So the question is, depending on what it is that, and this could go into your part 4 action plan, but depending on what it is that you're trying to grow in, you're going to lead in different ways. So if you need to become more, move in the create, you're going to do a lot more visioning and grow in your ability to do that. But say compete, this one's fairly easy, is you're going to have very specific SMART goals. And you're going to be more rigorous on how you connect things to outcomes. And then on collaborate, there's going to be ways you can improve that also and compete. So part of it is you think about how are you going to lead depending on which way you're wanting to go. So that's just explaining a little more of what was in your book. The other thing, and this actually gets very close to the action plan. So what would be your KPIs or your performance outcomes depending on what you're trying to grow in? So, as I mentioned, for City Vision, we said we wanted to grow and compete and control. So that was our total revenue. A lot of these things were true. Cash flow, we're a nonprofit, so we don't have profitability or some of these other things. But these top 2 were true. For us, the control was, basically we want our students to have a better experience and quality. So, reduce errors, higher quality courses, revising this course is part of that. And then create might be the number of new products, new source of revenue, and then collaborate would be, measures of employee morale or retention. So part of it is depending on which direction you need to move in, then you can develop steps for that. And then the other thing is, so say you want to move and control. For us, we had to create processes that are going to improve this. And I brought on some faculty and some other people that would do very detailed reviews of our courses. And they would identify, 50 different things that could be improved in the courses. So that became a process and we also have, the student feedback where we improve processes. So a lot of what you might do is you'd focus on, where's that going to come from? For compete, it may come from different, ideas. You may look at what are competitors doing and other things. So recognizing that all of these things can inform the final project this week. Be sure this week that you read the final project, then go through the material. And as you're going through the material, be thinking about where does this apply in the final project? Because the only material we gave you this week is material that's going to apply in the final project. And the final project instructions by themselves honestly don't explain all you need to know. you should view all the material this week kind of being a summary of what needs to go, or elements of the final project, and input into the final project. So with that, I'm going to give a detailed overview of the final project in the next video.